My name is Nicole Siniscalchi. I am Senior Associate Director of Admission. I'm joined by my colleague Rachel, who's going to be an excellent resource for you as we navigate the financial aid process, and we're going to provide a wealth of information for you so you feel really empowered about applying and like I said, joining us here at Teachers College someday as you navigate the application and financial aid processes. A couple of logistical items just so you can interact with Rachel and I today. I am going to direct your attention to the Q&A on your Zoom webinar toolbar. The Q&A is where you can send your questions along to Rachel or myself, and we're going to be keeping an eye on that throughout the session. If you want to go ahead and give it a test now, please feel free to let us know where you're connecting from, what programs you're interested in. Rachel and I would love to see where everyone is coming from. I see a couple of those coming in. Please go ahead, introduce yourself in that Q&A. We can see your submissions on our end, even though you cannot see each other. So we'll keep an eye on that. And we'll probably get to some of our live questions a little bit later in the session. But as things come up, please go ahead, use the Q&A, and we'll definitely take a look in there. And then my last item I do want to mention is that today's session is being recorded. So if you do want to revisit this content after the fact, well, we'll be happy to get that recording to you. We'll provide some contact information so you can reach out to get it. Awesome. Thank you all. I see a couple of those introductions coming in, people from all over the world interested in different things. We're so excited to have you. Go ahead, keep using that, and we'll take a look there. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel Harrington, Assistant Director of Financial Aid, who's going to kick off our session. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Nicole. And I am so excited to be here tonight, and I see everyone is joining. This is great. So as Nicole mentioned, my name is Rachel Harrington, and I am the Assistant Director here in the Office of Financial Aid. I just want to start today's session by saying, I remember when I was a student years ago and I was nervous about starting the financial aid process, and I didn't really know much about financial aid. One thing here, about Teachers College that I just want to tell all of you is you will not be alone in this process. So it's great that you're here today and you're going to learn all about the different financial aid programs here at Teachers College and how to go about applying for those different forms of financial aid, but you will not be alone in that process. You're going to have your own financial aid liaison that is going to be there to guide you through the process. So by no means do any of you have to be experts in the field of financial aid, after today's session. Today's just for you to gather more information, learn more about the programs and, what you're going to need to do to be considered for those programs. But if you need assistance down the line, you will have a dedicated financial aid liaison there to help guide you on your journey, because everyone's financial aid situations are unique. Everyone has, different questions, different concerns. So, you'll have someone there to sort of guide you and help you on your journey here at TC. One of the first things that I did want to touch upon, and this goes without saying, is how to stay informed during the process. It kind of goes without saying, but the main thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that you check your emails on a regular basis. The communications that you receive from not just my office, not just financial aid, but also admissions, you're going to be notified via email. So you want to keep an eye out for all of those important email communications. If you want to schedule some time, let's say with your financial aid liaison, and I will be sharing the information for each respective liaison at the end of today's presentation. So you're going to have their phone number and their email address. But if you wanted to schedule, let's say, a one-on-one session where you could discuss your concerns or your financial aid award letter or different scholarships you may be eligible for, you could schedule a phone or Zoom appointment with your financial aid liaison. Those are currently being offered. Another way you can stay in touch and in the know throughout the process is to continuously check your student portal. On your student portal, there will be a checklist, and that checklist will note any items that are missing. So you want to make sure you're checking emails and you're checking that checklist on a regular basis. Another important source is the federal website. There are updates on federal guidelines and federal programs. I want to say every month I'm hearing something new, and a good way to stay in the know is to visit that website on a regular basis. That website is studentaid.gov. It is the same website where you are going to apply for most of your federal aid options, which include federal work study, federal student loans, which I will get more into later on in today's session. But what I want you all to take away from this part of the presentation is the importance of checking emails. Very, very important. If you don't check your emails, you may miss an important deadline, an important message. So just make sure you stay on top of that. Now, the different forms of financial aid. So there's a lot of them, but I'm going to start with institutional versus federal aid. Here at TC, we have domestic students and we have international students. So I want to go over what the similarities are first between these two forms of aid. The institutional aid, all students can potentially qualify for institutional aid. Institutional aid, for example, would be scholarships. And the next question is going to be, how do I go about applying for institutional aid? Believe it or not, the scholarship application is embedded in the application for admissions. So when you are beginning your admissions application, you also want to be mindful that you are completing the portion of that application that asks you if you are interested in being considered for institutional aid. That application, you only have to do it once. It is a one-time requirement, and it's retained on file for the duration of your program. So what does that mean? I'll just give you an example. Let's say you are enrolled in a 2-year program, right? You're going to be at TC for 2 years. The scholarship application that you did during the admissions process, that application is going to be valid the whole time you're at Teachers College. So you want to make sure you do that application. I have, during my time at TC, I have had a few instances where students were going to be considered for funding from their program, and the program reaches out to me and says, hey, we don't have a scholarship application on file for this student. We can't award them points. So it's very, very important that you all not only do that application when you're doing your admissions application, but you want to also make sure that you are applying by the priority deadline, because those students that apply by the priority deadline will be given priority in terms of being considered for institutional aid. Another thing I want to bring up, and these are just questions that students have asked me along the way, is if I apply for institutional aid, will that in any way have any impact on the admissions decision? Absolutely not. We are here to help you. We want you to get institutional aid. There's so many different forms of funding available for students. So please, don't hesitate to do that portion of the application. And you do want to make sure that, again, you are applying by the priority deadline. On the program search page, you'll actually, if you go on the website, on the program search page, you will find the priority deadline for your program. I know this is more of an admissions question, but the priority deadline, for example, for doctoral students is right around the corner. It's December 1st, and the priority deadline for masters is January 15th. So it seems like everyone that's in this session right now, you guys are planners, that's why you're here. So I just wanted to make sure that I made you all aware of that. That way you could be considered for these scholarships that are available here at TC. And again, this is for both domestic and international students, so all students are welcome to apply. Now, the other form of scholarships or financial aid, I should say, is federal aid. Whenever you hear the word federal, you know that it is controlled by the federal government. So any form of federal aid is open to domestic students only. Federal aid requirements include having a valid social security number and citizenship status in the US. So as long as you meet those requirements, you could potentially qualify for federal aid. Many of you may already be aware of some federal aid programs from your undergraduate studies, but that includes the FAFSA. And I'm sure you've all heard that word before. We're going to get into the different forms of federal aid that are available at the graduate level, but just to name a few, you have federal student loans, federal work study, the federal teach grant, and the way you go about applying for any form of federal aid is by completing the FAFSA application. The FAFSA application is available on the federal website, which is studentaid.gov. When completing the FAFSA application, there is a section that is going to ask you to list your school code. You want to ensure that you are including the school code specifically for Teachers College, Columbia University. That school code is G03979. If you do not include the federal school code on your application and you submit the FAFSA, it never reaches our processing team. So you're never going to receive that award package via email from TC. So it is very important when completing your FAFSA that you are including that federal school code. If you happen to forget that school code, you could also search. There is a search bar and you would just put in Teachers College, Columbia University, and it'll just populate right there. But that's one area that you want to make sure that you have done. You're also going to want to, again, just to bring me back to my previous point, you're going to want to make sure you check your emails after submitting your FAFSA. I want to say it's usually like 3 to 5 business days after submitting the FAFSA, you will receive an alert from FAFSA notifying you of your student aid report, also known as your SAR. And what the SAR is going to show is if there were any discrepancies on your FAFSA application. For example, let's say you completed the application, but they need a copy of your taxes. This is just an example. Let's say they need a copy of your taxes in order to process it. That would be on your student aid report, and the way you would be notified is via email. So you would get that SAR report, and you would also get an alert from the financial aid office letting you know that additional documentation is required for processing. Another reason we have to check our emails. Another important point, unlike the institutional scholarship application that's embedded in your admissions application, the FAFSA application has to be done every academic year. So remember, the institutional scholarship application that you guys are doing during the admissions app, that's only done one time, and that follows you throughout the course of your program. The federal FAFSA application, that application has to get renewed each year. So just to give you an example, if you're going to be starting classes in the fall of 2023, the FAFSA that you're going to want to complete is for the academic year 2023 to 2024, because that's the academic year in which you would be starting. And then the following year, which would be fall of 2024, we're going to do a new FAFSA for the following academic year, which is going to be 2024 to 2025. Again, not to worry. It's not like, you guys are going to be in the dark here. If you do forget, you will get email notifications reminding you to renew your FAFSA. You're going to get those notifications from the financial aid office, and you're also going to get it directly from FAFSA. Again, another reason why we must check our emails. But those are the main differences between these two forms of financial aid. In regards to institutional scholarships, I just want to go back to that really quick. We have over 300 different scholarships. Okay, those scholarships are in the form of institutional scholarships. We have scholarships that could be awarded to you directly by your program and department. We also have very generous donors to the college, and those scholarships, we set up endowed accounts for those scholarships. So just by doing that one application in your admissions application, you're going to be considered for all these different types of scholarships that you see here. And you'll be considered for these scholarships each year you're at TC. Another point that I want to bring up, the awards that students receive are award year specific. So once you do complete your FAFSA and you do complete your scholarship application, and we're all going to complete our admissions applications by the priority deadline, once that's all done, you're going to receive a notification to check your aid offers via your student portal. The aid offers that you're going to see are going to be specific to the 2023 to 2024 academic year. Unless the scholarship you receive, there are some scholarships that might be renewable year to year. If it is renewable year to year, that would be stated in the terms and conditions of the scholarship, and it would also be noted somewhere on the email notification that you receive. So just, again, pay attention to your emails, read the terms and conditions, and if you have any questions about anything, if something is not clear, you will have your financial aid liaison there to help you and guide you through that process. The next area I wanted to focus on, we're still on scholarships, but there are some special scholarships outside of the scholarships you can get from the college. These are special scholarships that would require an additional application outside of the one that you're going to do with your admissions application. And I have some of them listed here. All of these scholarships are going to be available on our website, on the financial aid website. I want to say within the next week. The deadline for these applications is going to be January 25th. So please, whenever you have time, or even after this session today, you want to go and if you're not starting your admissions application, you want to start researching these different special scholarship opportunities, because they will become available for the 2023 to 2024 academic year within the next week, and that'll just help you prep for that. One thing that students don't realize is employment opportunities are also a form of financial aid. And we have two different main forms of employment opportunities for students. Some are federal work study and some are in the form of graduate assistantships. I'm going to start with the similarities between both. So for all forms of employment opportunities, you want to refer to the TC Human Resource website, because that's where you're going to find those positions listed. There are some students that reach out to me and they say, Rachel, I'm interested in a federal work study position, but I don't see it on the financial aid website. And I say, that's because it's on the human resource website. So it's it's something that students can easily get mixed up, because they think financial aid, they think work study. You want to make sure for any type of employment opportunity, whether it's a graduate assistantship, research assistant, teacher assistant, that you're going to the human resource website, because it's going to that's where you're going to find those positions listed. If you are going to be starting classes September of next year and you visit that website today, you might not find any positions available for September just yet, but you could visit it just to get an idea of the different types of opportunities that are available to students. I would say for students starting in September, it's a good idea to start checking the human resource website on a regular basis, probably like around April. That's when you're going to start to see the positions for the fall. So you just want to make sure that you're checking that website if that's something that's of interest to you. The graduate assistantships are open to both domestic and international students. So whether you're a domestic student or an international student, you could apply for and be considered for any form of the graduate assistantships here at TC. The salaries do also vary, so I'm not going to get too much into the salaries, because they would vary, based on the position. The federal work study, on the other hand, that is a federal program. So right away we hear that word federal again. We know that it is offered through the federal government. So the criteria to be considered is to complete a FAFSA, and we also have to make sure that we have a valid social security number and valid U.S. citizenship in order to be considered for federal work study because it is a federal program. So we're completing the FAFSA. It's also based on financial need and demonstrated interest. I will explain what this means. When you do the FAFSA, there is one section that is going to ask you to enter your income for the tax year 2021. That's how far back they go for this next upcoming academic year. So when you're entering your income, that's ultimately what's going to determine if you are eligible to receive work study because it is need-based. So you have to have a certain income to qualify. There's also a question on the FAFSA application, and many students miss this question. I see a lot of applications where the question was left blank. The question is, do you want to be considered for federal work study? And students just skip over it. They'll say don't know because they didn't find a position yet, or they'll say no because they're not interested at the time. It's always a good idea to answer yes to that question, because circumstances can change. Just as an example, let's say you complete the FAFSA tomorrow, and right now you're like, no, I'm not going to need federal work study. It's not something that's of interest to me. But then you start classes in September and you see a position on the human resource website that is a great fit for you and it's something you're interested in. Now you can't apply for that position because you did not apply for federal work study. So it's always a good idea just to answer yes to the question. And that way, one, you'll know if you meet the requirements, if it'll be an option. If it comes back that you are eligible, you're in no way obligated to accept the offer. It would just be there for you to have should you need it in the future. But, again, when completing the FAFSA, just please make sure that you are answering, well, not just that question, but all the questions. You want to answer all the questions on the FAFSA, but just so you could be considered for federal work study, you want to make sure that you're answering yes. The income for that particular program, so unlike the graduate assistantships, like I mentioned, where the income could vary, the income for federal work study is capped because federal guidelines say we have to cap it. The federal work study students can make up to $9,000 per academic year. The income that you would receive from a federal work study position would be just like the income you receive from any other job. You would get a check and you could use that check to cover your tuition. You could use it to cover your transportation, to buy food. It's your money to do, what you want to do with it. So that's one question that I get often from students is, I just accepted a federal work study position. How do I have to spend the money? And I always tell them it's your money. You worked for it. You can spend it however you like. So that's just one thing that I wanted to point out to everyone. And I will move on to the next slide. So more federal programs. So we see that word federal again. We've talked about federal work study, where we know that's employment where you could work essentially on campus and earn an income. And that income you do not have to repay. Federal student loans, on the other hand, we hear that word federal. So we know right away we need to complete a FAFSA in order to be considered for this program because it is a federal program. The federal student loans, if you are going to accept a federal student loan, whatever amount you accept would have to be repaid after you graduate. There are two different types of student loans two different types of federal student loans at the graduate level. And some of you may be familiar with these terms here from your undergraduate studies. So we have the unsubsidized loan and we have the graduate plus loan. At the graduate level, the unsubsidized loan, students can receive up to $20,500 per year. That's the most that anyone could receive in an unsubsidized student loan. The way you go about applying for that loan is by completing the FAFSA. And that's it. Once you complete the FAFSA, and once that application is processed, you're going to receive your financial aid offers, and it will list your eligibility for the unsubsidized loan as well as the graduate plus loan. But the most anyone could receive is $20,500 per year. Now, let's say you need more than 20,500. I'm just speaking hypothetically. Let's say, you need an extra $10,000, right? And you already took out the 20,500 in the unsubsidized loan. You have the option to apply for the Graduate Plus loan option. The main difference between these two is the Graduate Plus loan requires a credit check. So if you want to be approved, not if you want to be approved, if you wanted to apply for the Graduate Plus loan, aside from doing the FAFSA application, there is a separate credit check that students would have to submit. It's also done on studentaid.gov. Everything financial aid related is on studentaid.gov. That's why I keep saying that website. But the great thing about the Graduate Plus loan is, unlike the unsubsidized loan where they have the cap of 20,500, the Graduate Plus loan, students can borrow up to the full cost of attendance, less any other sources of financial aid. So what does that mean? You're going to hear the term cost of attendance a lot, and students often confuse their cost of attendance with their tuition. So I just want to briefly get into that and what that means, because you may hear that term and you're like, wait, what does that mean? So when when students decide to pursue graduate education, you have direct cost and you have indirect cost of pursuing a program. So just to give you an example, a direct cost would be costs that are directly charged to you by the college. So that would be like your tuition, for example. You're going to get a statement from the Office of the Bursar letting you know what your tuition balance is. An indirect cost might be your transportation to and from school, your living expenses, books and supplies, things like that. The cost of attendance, that's a term that we use in the Office of Financial Aid, so we could understand not just the students' direct costs, like their tuition, but understanding what their cost of living is, what their cost of attendance is as a college student. So if a student, again, let's say you have a tuition balance of $10,000, right? And you already took out the unsubsidized loan to cover that, but you need additional funding to help cover your rent while you're in school, travel expenses, anything like that, and you want to take a student loan to help cover those costs, the Graduate Plus loan is a good loan to consider because it allows you to borrow up to your cost of attendance. And the financial aid liaisons, we're here to help students calculate the cost of attendance. It's all based on a student's registration status. So the only thing the student would have to do in that case, if you wanted to consider the Graduate Plus loan, aside from doing the credit check and the FAFSA and all that stuff, is connect with your financial aid liaison and just, let them know what's going on. Just say, hey, I want to borrow additional funds, but I want to know how much I could borrow based on my cost of attendance. The only thing the student would have to do at that point is let the financial aid liaison know what your registration plans are for the academic year. Because whether you're going to be a part-time student or a full-time student, that's going to have an effect on your cost, because the cost is going to be different for part-time versus full-time. So that's really the only responsibility that the student has in that regard. But you will have, like I said, the financial aid liaison there to help you calculate that cost of attendance, and the Graduate Plus loan can be used to borrow up to that amount. So it's really important that the cost of attendance is calculated accurately. Okay, more sources of financial aid. So in the beginning, I spoke a little bit about the institutional scholarships that are available, through the college, and you're going to do your admissions application to be considered for those. There are also external scholarships. If you visit our website, there is a list of different external scholarships there. I would encourage all of you, when you have the time, just to take a look at some of those opportunities, because there are so many of them and they all have different criteria. You'd be surprised how many students I've spoken to that initially just thought, I'm just going to take a loan for this, or I'm just going to pay out of pocket. It is what it is. I'm not going to qualify for a scholarship. But then they went And they checked the external scholarship page and they found opportunities that were excellent fits for them. So it's just important to take the time to look at those and also connect with your financial aid liaison to see if there are any special scholarships for your program in particular. There is another federal program as well offered through FAFSA. It's called the Federal Teach Grant. So this particular grant, it has a certain set of criteria that I just want to go over because it's very important. So if you do the FAFSA application and you get your results back and it comes out that you are eligible for this grant recipients agree to teach for at least 4 years within 8 years of finishing their teacher preparation program. And they also agree to teach in eligible positions at designated schools that serve low-income students. I know that's a lot. So that will also be, again, another reason why we want to pay attention to the terms and conditions. If you are eligible for the federal Teach Grant and you're considering accepting that offer, just be mindful of that criteria. If you were to accept the Teach Grant offer and let's say a student, down the line, they receive the grant and then after they graduate, they don't meet that agreement to teach. What happens is whatever was given to them as a grant is then turned into an unsubsidized loan. So now the student has to pay that back. So as an example, if the student was granted $3,000 from the Teach Grant because they agreed to the criteria, and then after graduation, they did not meet that criteria, that $3,000 is now an unsubsidized loan that the student has to repay. So another reason we want to, pay very close attention to the terms and conditions. So I wanted to highlight that one because it's an excellent program, but you just have to make sure that that's going to be for you because everyone's goals at the end of the day are different. Now, international students. Okay, so I spoke a lot about the different forms of financial aid and, the forms of financial aid that were available to domestic students and international students and to everyone. I want to focus on international students for a bit because we do have a very large international population here at TC, and we have an office dedicated to our international students. So aside from financial aid office, we have our Office of International Students and Scholars there to assist you as well. For example, if you have any questions about the visa application process and things that you would need like that, let's just say this is going to be your first time studying internationally, you have that office there to assist you. They are the experts and they're wonderful and they're going to be there to guide you all the way. A part of our institutional scholarships embedded in that admissions application, we have the TC International Scholarship as well that students could potentially be awarded by the college and their program. So that's another reason why we want to make sure we apply for scholarships and we're applying by the priority deadline. International students are also welcome to check out the external scholarships that are listed on the TC website. I know we touched upon the employment opportunities that are a form of financial aid. The federal work study would not be an option for international students only because that is a federal program. Again, and it has that criteria to have the valid Social Security number and U.S. citizenship. But students, international students can apply for graduate assistantships. The only thing that you want to be mindful of is any special visa-related considerations that may affect your eligibility for employment. So if you have any questions about your eligibility to work here in the U.S. and you're unsure, you would want to connect with the Office of International Students and Scholars, or you could connect with the Office of Financial Aid and we would direct you there as well. In regards to loans with international students, unfortunately, you can't apply for the federal loans, again, because of the federal criteria. However, there are many international students that I've worked with that have applied for private loans. Here at TC, we don't have a preferred list of lenders. So If you are going to go the private loan route, you are more than welcome to use whichever lender you feel is going to be the best fit for you. The only thing that I would suggest everyone be mindful, both international students and domestic students, if you're going to be considering any type of private loans, is you want to check the interest rates and the repayment options, because the interest rates can vary and they differ greatly. I've seen interest rates with private lenders as low as 3%. I've seen it as high as 16%. It can really vary. So if you're going to consider any type of private loan, you want to make sure that you are asking the lender all of those questions, repayment plan options, and your interest rates. For international students, the private loans, a lot of the time they will require a U.S. cosigner. Now that is creditworthy. I have had students that have gotten loans from their home country. That is another option. Again, we do not have a preferred list of lenders when it comes to private loans. So if that's something that you want to explore, you are more than welcome to choose any lender of your choosing. If that is an avenue you're exploring and you're just not sure, about the interest rate they offered you or the repayment plan they offered you, you're also more than welcome to reach out to your financial aid liaison for any advice and guidance on that process. Okay, we're back at that word again, that term, cost of attendance, which I touched upon a bit. So again, the cost of attendance, that helps us in the Office of Financial Aid understand the students' cost of living and their indirect expenses as a college student. So that would include, again, your personal expenses, your room and board, food, transportation, tuition, all the fun stuff that goes into being a graduate student. And your enrollment status is going to have an effect on how high or how low your cost of attendance is. So just to go over this a little bit, if students are enrolled less than half time, you're not eligible for any form of federal aid. Less than half time would be less than 5 credits. So as long as you're registered for 5 credits each semester, you could potentially be eligible for the federal aid options that I discussed. If you are enrolled for less than 5 credits, which is less than half time, you could still get scholarships, but not graduate assistantships. So if you're considering registering for less than 5 credits and you're still unclear again on, what forms of aid you could potentially qualify for, you are more than welcome to reach out directly to your liaison, but you just want to be very mindful that anything less than half time, which is 5 credits per semester, you would not be eligible for federal aid. And then full-time would be 9 or more credits. So the safe zone is 5. That's the magic number. We want to make sure that we are registered for at least 5 credits each semester. If you are not registered for if you're not registered for at least 5 credits in a given semester, you will not be eligible for federal aid, unfortunately. Okay, so refunds. This is a very important topic, and it may vary student by student because, again, everyone's financial situation is going to be unique, and everyone's going to be taking a different amount of credits and have a different tuition statement and different amount of scholarship they got. So everyone's unique, but I want to touch upon this a little bit with an example of how students could potentially receive refunds from federal aid. So just to simplify it a bit, you would receive a refund if you received more aid than you needed. So an example is, let's just say a student received $20,000 in total aid. Okay, let's say it's $20,000 they got in scholarships and financial aid, $20,000, but they only needed $15,000 to cover their tuition and their college fees. That would mean that student has $5,000 left over. That's going to be refunded to them. If you are eligible for a refund, you would be notified via email. So another reason we're checking our email, and one thing to be mindful of with the refunds, could be used for anything, within your cost of attendance. So you could use it for books, you could use it to cover your housing expenses, your transportation. Just a note, and I don't have it listed here, but when you are starting your classes at TC, refunds are issued two ways. So students can receive a refund via check, or you could receive a refund via direct deposit. I would just be mindful when you start classes, you want to make sure that your mailing address, especially if you're moving to attend TC, you want to make sure that your mailing address is updated on your student portal. Because if you're eligible for a refund and a refund check is sent to you via mail, that check is going to be mailed to your mailing address. And I've had some instances where my students forgot to update their mailing addresses and their refund checks were sent to their address before they moved to New York to attend TC, which, we were able to help them and we just issued another check and it was fine, but it delayed the refund process for the students. So I would just strongly encourage everyone to make sure that their mailing addresses are up to date. If you prefer to receive refunds via direct deposit on your student portal, you will also have the option to enroll in e-refund. And if you're enrolled in e-refund, a check would not be mailed to you, but instead we would just have the funds deposited directly to your checking account. And that leaves me to my last point. I've talked a lot about the the different financial aid liaisons. So I am the liaison for arts and humanities and international and transcultural studies. So if you're going to be joining one of those departments, I will be your financial aid liaison and I welcome you and I'll be here to help you through all the steps that we discussed earlier, but we really have a great team in financial aid. We have our other liaisons, Alyssa Timko, Tom Zarkos, and Janet Solfredo, all here to help you through the process. This information is also available on the financial aid website. So after today's session, if I am going to be checking the Q&A bar because I see that we have some questions that came in, but if you have a question that wasn't answered, let's say in today's session, or if you just want to connect with your liaison one-on-one, let's say you have some specific concerns that you want to address, I do encourage you to reach out to your liaison's email. We also have the general financial aid web, which is financialaid@tc.columbia.edu. But it's strongly encouraged to reach out directly to your financial aid liaison, assigned financial aid liaison based on your program, only because that person would be most knowledgeable on, scholarships specific to your program of study. So I do encourage you all to reach out directly to them. And not to repeat myself, but I'm going to. We also want to remember to apply for scholarships. The institutional scholarship application is embedded in the application for admissions. And in order to be eligible, or I should say, in order to be considered for those scholarships, you want to make sure that you are applying by the priority deadline. Please apply for the scholarships. Don't miss that priority deadline because we definitely want to see you all succeed, and we are here to help you. So I'm going to move on to the Q&A. I just want to see some of the questions that we had come in. Okay. Let's see. Okay, we have a great question that I did not touch upon, and I'm so sorry for that. So I have a question here. Oh wait, let me get it again. Do we provide housing to international students? Yes, we do. So international students, domestic students, you are more than welcome. That information is also on the website. You can reach out to student housing to inquire on different different apartments that may be available on campus, but that is a great question. And just to touch on that a little bit more, if, again, it goes back to cost of living. So if a student needed additional funding to help cover the housing, that's another reason you would want to reach out to your financial aid liaison to get that situated. That is an excellent question. Okay, another great question. It says, are the special scholarships a part of the TC application itself, or are they a separate application? So excellent question. So yes, these special scholarships with that deadline of January 25th, that is a separate application. So the special scholarships, just to name some of them, and you'll see them on our website within the next week. So you want to make sure that you're checking that out. We have the City Year, Lemon, Posse, Abby O'Neill, and the Scholarship for Displaced Students. These are all special scholarships that would require the student to submit an additional application on top of the one that they did during admissions to be considered. So that is an excellent question. Let's see. Okay, this is a good question in regards to federal loans. So the question is, would a Graduate Plus loan be eligible for an income-based repayment plan? Absolutely. One thing I really didn't touch upon as much, and I apologize for that, but when it comes to the, again, the private loans, they're going to have their, depending on the lender, they're going to have their own set of repayment options and interest. But with the both federal unsubsidized loan and the federal Graduate Plus loan, they have different payment plan options. One of them is income driven as well. So as long as you reach out to your assigned loan servicer, you can get set up with that specific plan. But they do have those. That was an excellent question. Okay, another good question. Can we access the TC external scholarship page before admittance? Absolutely. You can access it right now. And please go check it out after today's session. If you go to the financial aid website, you will see there is a link that says external scholarships, and you can, just do your research on that. And after that's done, again, we want to make sure that we are doing our admissions applications by the priority deadline so we can be considered for those institutional scholarships. That is so important. Okay, and the special scholarships, again, I have a lot of questions about the special scholarships, which I think is great because it means you guys are going to go on and apply for those special scholarships. Those particular applications should be available on the financial aid website within the next week or so. You're also, just to point out, with the special scholarships, they all have different criteria to them. So once you submit your admissions application, if you meet the criteria for those special scholarships, you're also going to get a separate email notification inviting you to apply for that specific scholarship. So when it comes to these special scholarships, this is another thing where you guys are not going to be left on your own to do this stuff yourself. You are going to get those email communications reminding you to get those applications in, but we will identify those students that should apply based on the criteria of each special scholarship. Okay, here's another good question, and it's something I get a lot from students. It says, could you give us an estimate of up to how much a student could get in scholarships or financial aid in order to utilize as much financial aid as possible? So, unfortunately, I can't give a realistic amount of how much scholarships a student can get because it truly does vary. There are some students that will apply for both the institutional scholarships as well as the special scholarships, and in that case, naturally, they have a higher chance of getting more. The only figures that I have like a definite calculation on are the federal forms of financial aid, because the federal gives us that cap. So again, the unsubsidized loan, the most a student can get each academic year is $20,500. The federal work study, the most a student can earn is up to $9,000 per year. And with the federal graduate plus loan, the cap is based on the student's cost of attendance. So that could vary student to student based on the student's cost of attendance. Another great question. Oh, I can't believe I did not mention this. I love this question. Okay. It says, thanks for the information. I would like to ask if the scholarship contains any stipends, or does it only cover the tuition fee? Excellent, excellent question. Many of the institutional scholarships cover tuition only. However, the other scholarships that we offer through the programs and the endoweds, those can be awarded as stipends and can be used to cover cost of living expenses. So students do have the potential of being awarded a scholarship or a stipend. That is a great question. And just to touch upon the refunds, again, if a student's getting a stipend through their program, that would be issued the same way a refund would be, which would be a check mailed to the mailing address or via direct deposit. So another reason why we want to make sure our mailing address is accurate by the time we start class, in case you guys are getting any of those. Okay, great question. What if my program starts in the summer? What academic year would that be? I love this question because, like I said earlier, everything is academic year specific. So it's important to know which academic year you're going to be falling into. So right now, currently, we're in the 2022 to 2023 academic year. If you're starting in the summer of 2023, you're starting in 2022, 2023. The next academic year, which is going to be 2023 to 2024, that starts with the fall of 2023. And that academic year will consist of the fall, the spring of 2024, and then the summer of 2024, and then a new academic year would begin. So excellent question. If your program is going to be starting over the summer of 2023, you're starting at the end of 2022, 2023. So the FAFSA you're going to want to do is the FAFSA they have for this academic year, 2022, 2023. And then you'll get an email notification in the middle of that semester to renew your FAFSA for the fall. So I love that question. It's a great question to ask. And I have a few more. I just want to be mindful of time. Okay, this is a great question. It says, how will we know if we have reached our federal loan max? I love this question. Via email. if, and I haven't had many of much students like this during my time at TC, but if you did reach the cap for the unsubsidized loan, what would happen in that case is you would be notified via email that you have reached the cap, but your loan options would all then fall under the graduate plus loan option, which again, that one's credit-based. So you would still have the option for student loans, but if you reach the cap for the unsubsidized loan, it would just mean that all of your options fall under the graduate plus loan. But your financial aid liaison would be there to help you with that. And yes, everyone, I'm getting questions if you can access the webinar again. This webinar is being recorded, so yes, you definitely can access this webinar again. Just reading some more. Okay, the special scholarship decision. This was a good question. It says, thank you for the detailed explanation for financial aid. When do we generally receive notifications for scholarship decisions? So when it comes to the special scholarships, the deadline to submit the applications, that's going to be the end of January. So that's January 25th. And everyone could expect to receive the decisions by the first week of March, if you're going to be putting those applications in. Okay, and this is surprising. I have not gotten this before, but I have a few questions like this. And students are asking if their age would have any impact on the financial aid criteria. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We get students many different age groups. I do know at the undergraduate level, so not at the graduate level, but at the undergraduate level, if students are under the age of 24, you need to submit your parents' income on the FAFSA. At the graduate level, that's not a factor anymore. So students of all ages can apply for these different federal aid options that I discussed. There is a question on the FAFSA that will ask you to list your grade level. And as long as you answer that you are working on a master's or doctorate program, you are going to be independent according to FAFSA. And all that means is that your financial aid eligibility would be based on your income and your income alone. It would not be based on your parents or anyone else's income. But that is a great question to ask. And I think that's all the questions we really have time for today. I wanted to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out to attend this session. Just by you all being here today, it all shows me that you guys are planners. You like to plan ahead. You have all your ducks in a row, which is great. So again, next steps, if we didn't do it already, is we want to submit our admissions applications by the priority deadline. We want to make sure that we are also completing the institutional scholarship application that is embedded within that admissions application. And this webinar will be available. It's being recorded. So if there's something you missed, you're more than welcome to rewatch this webinar. But I do strongly encourage each and every one of you, if there's any concerns that you have in regards to this fascinating world of financial aid, to reach out directly to your financial aid liaisons. If you did not write down our email addresses, which I shared previously, you could go right onto the financial aid website. There in the drop-down menu, it says our team, and you will see a list of the liaisons by department right there. And I thank you all again. Thank you so much, and have a great night.